What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Vine and Branches podcast. We're so excited to have you here. We hope you're having a great day, and if not, hopefully we can make it a little bit better. We're continuing with our series of digging in verse by verse through John. Today we'll be digging into John chapter 9. So if you're following along, we're going to start in verse 1, and let's get into it. As he passed by, he saw a blind man from birth, and his disciples asked him, "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus answered, "It was not that this man sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be displayed in him. We must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. Night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world."
Pause. What did you think about that?
I think that's pretty powerful, actually. I think it's interesting that they thought that if you had a disability or something, that it was because of sin or because of your parents. And I kind of track with their thinking process on that, because kind of like what we talked about last episode with how Adam and Eve, the people after them, lived so long and how sin was a disease. I think it's kind of the same thing with like disabilities, because like obviously people are not supposed to have, diabetes or whatever. I think that it's a reaction to something that's happening or something that's not supposed to be happening in your body. And so, in that context, sin could technically, I kind of follow with their track of thinking of, yes, sin could probably be the reason that this person was blind. And so I think that's kind of an interesting thought to think that they were thinking that. But I also love Jesus' response where he's saying it was neither him or the Father. It was that way God's works could be shown through this guy. And I think that was pretty powerful of how even in our own lives, when things are not going our way, or when something looks like, it's not supposed to be good, that God can work it for a good. And we're about to see that he does, in fact, do God's work and performs a miracle. But yeah, that's what I thought about it. What did you think about it?
I liked it. I liked it a lot. I've heard people use this verse to talk about. I saw this video of there's a kid and he had cancer, and this, I guess it was his dad or something, was asking him about it, and the kid was like, "Yeah, I'm glad that God gave it to me."
I think I've seen
Have you seen that?
Yeah, I think I've seen it.
Okay. And then I went and I was looking at the comments, and the comments were like totally lopsided. Some people were like, "Well, I don't believe God gave him cancer." And some people were like, well, yes. And then I'm reading all these lopsided things, and then somebody brought up this verse where Jesus said, it was neither him that sinned or his parents, but that the works of God might be shown through him. So I find that topic very interesting in my mind. I don't know exactly where I land on it, like on the whole side of how that works, because I don't think it's a direct punishment.
Yeah.
Obviously. No. Obviously.
Because if it was a direct punishment, I'd be blind, or I'd be,
Exactly. But it also, evil is in the world because we sinned. People wouldn't have had cancer or diabetes or anything before Adam and Eve sinned.
I think I don't think it's a direct punishment, but I think it's a byproduct of our actions.
Mm-hmm.
In the same way that our actions today have consequences for our future, the actions of Adam and Eve and even us have consequences, whether for good or for bad, in our future. And so I think that's kind of what it is.
Exactly. And I think what he's saying kind of right here is that he's looking at the positive side of it, and the fact that God he allows, obviously, I mean, it's not that sin's so powerful he can't control it and all this, but he allows these things to enter the world for his glory to be shown. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that's how I picture it. Would you agree?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think yeah. I think you hit it on the head.
Absolutely. You can keep reading now.
Verse 6. Having said these things, he spit on the ground and made mud with the saliva. Then he anointed the man's eyes with the mud and said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam," which means sent. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Verse 8. The neighbors and those who had seen him before as a beggar were saying, "Is this not the man who used to sit and beg?" Some said, "It is he." Others said, "No, but he is like him." He kept saying, "I am the man." So they said to him, "Then how are your eyes opened?" And he answered, "The man called Jesus made mud and anointed my eyes and said to me, 'Go to Siloam and wash.' So I went and washed, and I received my sight."
Stop right there. Something that just hit me that I've never thought about. Never gathered this from the story.
I'm ready for it. Lay it on me.
It came to my mind just now that he gathers mud and wipes it on, and that we were made from the dirt and mud. And so he's basically bringing them back almost to where the original place of where God made us.
And I think it's okay. This is a little bit off topic, but just to go straight back to the garden when Jesus was in the beginning. We saw that in chapter 1, verse 1. In the beginning was the Word, and nothing was made without Jesus. And so, what do you think about this like train of thought that Jesus was also like there, like making human, and also like in this, like this is just complete food for thought. I don't know if there's any validity to what I'm about to say, but let's say like Jesus was back then making humans like from the dust, and he was like crafting us and like molding us and creating us to this perfect being, or like not to perfect being, but like to be in his image and in his likeness. And so I guess in a sense you could say perfect.
I mean, he does say, and it was good, and it was, he was making it.
And so what do you think about Jesus knowing all? Well, see, then this is kind of where does he I don't know. But let's say that he like remembers that, right? And he's like making the mud, and he's doing the same thing that he did like in the garden on this dude's eyes. What do you think about that? I like I said, I don't know. It's a little bit of food for thought. I really don't know if this is like any validity to what I just said, but I think it's kind of cool to think about.
Bro was having deja vu as he did it.
Yeah.
Like, dude, this is like some.
Yeah, what do you think about that? Do you think that like could have like been a thing?
Could have happened?
Yeah.
I think it could have happened. Anything could happen with God. But, I mean, I don't know if it did happen, but it definitely could have.
I think it's kind of cool to think about. What do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
That would have been a really cool thing. Like,
totally. Dude, when I read that, that just like blew my mind. I've never thought about it like that.
And you know what else I kind of like about this passage? As you're talking about the mud thing, I kind of was brought to my memory that when he says go and wash, and if you like, we kind of remember like they're not necessarily by a river, I don't think, but he's saying go to Siloam and wash. And so there's this blind man with mud on his eyes and spit mud on his eyes, and he's trying to find his way to the river. And so this, even in that, like, it was a testing of the man's faith. Are you going to go and wash? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, the dude was blind, and he had to find a river to go wash off.
He had to have faith and go do it.
And you can see that he's not, like, just, like, directly by the river, because when he comes out of the water, Jesus is not there no more.
Yeah. Yeah, he's gone. And he had to come back, and he was like, dude, I can see now.
Yeah. And so I think that's kind of cool and kind of interesting that there was even a testing of faith in the man.
Absolutely. Yeah, he had to have faith when he went. That's powerful.
What verse were we on?
Dude, I don't know. I got so caught up.
I know. I was
talking about
we went
that.
down a little bit of a rabbit hole, didn't we?
We were down by 13, I think. Somewhere around there.
I think we were in verse 12.
Like 10 or, okay, yeah.
I think we're in verse 12. So starting in verse 12, they said to him, "Where is he?" He said, "I do not know." They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been formerly blind. Now it was a Sabbath day when Jesus made the mud and had opened his eyes. So the Pharisees again asked him how he received his sight. And he said to them, "He put mud on my eyes, and I washed, and I see." Some of the Pharisees said, "This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath." But others said, "How can a man who is a sinner do such things and such signs?" And there was a division among them. So they said again to the blind man, "What do you say about him, since he has opened your eyes?" He said, "He is a prophet."
Pause. Have you ever wondered why they jumped so quickly on, oh, he did these things on the Sabbath? When, in my perspective, I don't feel like, well, take this with a grain of salt. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying, but it wouldn't be hard to make mud and wipe it on his eyes. I mean, he is performing this great miracle, but I don't think that was hard for Jesus to do. But, you see what I'm saying? Like, it's not that hard. So, is it like, can you walk on the Sabbath? Because it takes energy and strength to do.
Yeah,
like, I don't know.
Takes work.
Yeah, like, where's the line of what you can do? You know? So, like, where's that line that you can do works on the Sabbath? It doesn't make sense to me. It probably would make sense to me if I lived back then. I've just never understood how they can be like, oh, bro did works on the Sabbath. Like, what do you do on the Sabbath if you can't do such little tasks?
Yeah. So what was your question for me?
I don't really know. That just puzzles me. Like, that they're just like,
That they're so like focused on the Sabbath.
and yeah, and
I
you
think-
can't do any.
I think their big reason for that is because that was one of the commandments.
Yeah, and they're always,
And
they're
these are
definitely
the
trying to follow works.
the goody gooders. Yeah, they were like
You
the
gotta do
do-gooders.
these.
They were trying to follow these laws. I believe there's 613. Am I right on that?
Sounds right.
I think there were 613 laws, and these dudes were trying to follow all of them. I mean, they were trying to be the class pet of the church. Like, they were trying to follow all these rules. I'm not saying you shouldn't follow like the rules of the church or whatever, but I'm saying these people had sin in their lives, but they were deceiving themselves because they were being good and following the law.
It's all behind the heart.
It goes back to when he's talking about, why do you clean the outside of the cup, but the inside's dirty? And so he's obviously relating that back to our body. They look good on the outside, but on the inside they're corrupted, and they're in need of a savior.
Hold on. You just said that, and I had the biggest like epiphany, I guess you could call it. Do you agree? I know a lot of people maybe wouldn't agree, but do you ever like wash a plate and then are like, I'm not washing the bottom, that's dumb.
I personally wash the bottom.
Nah, hold on. I do sometimes because I know people in my family
You're so
would
goofy,
appreciate
bro.
it. But dude, I'm like, I'm not eating at the bottom. Why do I need to wash the bottom? Does that make sense?
Like,
So
in
when
a sense, I understand.
When you said that, it brought me to the same place of, who cares what I look like on the outside? I've had this debate with people about cleaning up and cleaning up your house and different things, right? When people are coming over. I'm always like, bro, why would you clean up your house when people are coming over? All you're doing is putting on this like makeup facade of how good I look.
Yep.
You know? And then they're like, no, but I'm showing effort to say, listen, I value that you're coming over, so I'm going to put in effort when you're coming over. And I was like, oh, okay.
Fair point.
I can see that.
And I'm gonna say yes. I definitely would clean my house before somebody came over.
Because like I agree with dressing up. Well, not dressing up, but I put on nice clothes, collared shirt, button up, to go to church, and I make my hair and stuff because God deserves my best. I should put in some effort.
For sure.
Not that I have to look good.
It's not
that
for
he
other people to see.
Or that he really cares what I look like that.
Yeah, because he doesn't look at our outward appearance.
Exactly. But there is still some truth behind it. I'm not saying you shouldn't clean your house. I do sometimes get a little like, well, why would you do that? But anyways, cleaning the cup.
So okay, you said that, and it kind of made me. We're going down a rabbit hole right now,
Yeah,
but
we
I
are.
love it. I love it. So you were saying that about basically, and I said
It started because you said about why clean the outside of the cup if you're not going to clean
Right.
the inside, because we were talking about doing works.
right, and then I got to eventually that the God doesn't look on our outward appearance, but looks at the heart. What do you think? Here's another kind of like, probably no validity to this, but it's just like food for thought that I just had a thought about it. Is like Jesus when he was walking around and he was looking at people. Like, yes, he saw like their physical skin and whatever because he was man, but also like, do you think like God was telling him like exactly like their heart posture?
Like I think when I think about it, I have no reason. There's no verse that I get this from. But when I think about it, I would think, well, he sees some people like that, but I don't know that he would just sit and look at everybody like that. Like, I don't know. Sometimes I just think he relaxes and takes.
Do you think that like Jesus, like because he was like fully God also and fully man, like do you think his fully God part like he already knew like everybody by name, or do you think God like had to reveal that to him?
Man, I have no idea. That's a really good question.
4 words, I do not know.
Bro goes up, hey, I'm Jesus. Oh, hey, I know.
I know.
I know.
I know.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Well, I just like I think back to the woman at the well,
And he just knew it all.
and he just knew it all. He's like, yeah, you're right. You don't have a husband. You have 5. It's like, dang, all right.
Bro knew everything about her. That's a really good question. Also, back then, he wouldn't have probably done I know. Sometimes he literally asked questions, even in the garden, even all throughout the Bible. God will ask questions even when he knows the answer. He's just kind of like asking it because he wants us to answer him and talk to him,
That, and also like I think of we'll see this later on in John, but the Garden of Gethsemane, where he asks God and he says, "Take this cup away from me, but nevertheless your will be done." And I think about that, and I think Jesus already knew the answer, but I think he just like found there's like this sort of comfort of just asking. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I agree that he would know
I mean, obviously he knew he was about to be
die.
like brutally murdered.
In that Bible verse, that's the one where he literally was like sweating blood.
Yep, Garden of Gethsemane was when he
was literally taking on the sin and like.
And I believe that's the one where his disciples fell asleep on him.
Dude, imagine that. I've heard some people say that was probably one of the hardest times
Was his friends
Jesus.
falling asleep on him? Or just the Garden of Gethsemane?
In his life, yes.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Have you ever sweat blood because you're so anxious?
Dude, that would be bonkers wild.
Can you imagine sweating blood?
You ever... Dude, I literally can't. Like, when I picture it, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I know. I feel like you don't really get a whole... I want to ask, like... Hopefully we can get, like, a doctor on the podcast sometime, or, like, a nurse or, like, an ER person, and we can ask him if it's...
Does that ever happen?
Yeah, have you ever had, like, a call where somebody's sweating blood? Like that would be interesting.
Dude, I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's, like, it's interesting to me, too, is, like how much blood was it? Like, a little bit or a lot? Like, was dude, like, pouring, like, blood? Like, was it, like, dripping, or was it...
dripping sweat off of his brow?
Because, I mean, like, when you sweat, like, depending on who you are, you can drip sweat.
Or if you're in Texas and it's 120 degrees and you're
There
in
is
camp,
that. There is that.
You sweat.
You do sweat. Yeah. 100%.
Okay, I think that was
enough rabbit hole for us.
That was probably the longest rabbit hole we've went on.
But I think it was fun.
That was awesome.
It was a fun rabbit hole. Do you
We're
remember?
We're on verse 18.
Okay. The Jews did not believe that he had been blind and that he received sight until they called the parents of the man who had received sight and asked him, "Is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then does he now see?" His parents answered, "We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But how he sees we do not know, nor do we know who opened his eyes. Ask him. He is of age, and he will speak for himself." Verse 22. His parents said these things because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had already agreed that if anyone should confess Jesus to be Christ, he was to be put out of the synagogue. Therefore his parents said to him, "He is of age, ask him." So for the second time they called the man who had been blind and said to him, "Give glory to God. We know that this man is a sinner." He answered, "Whether he is a sinner, I do not know. One thing I do know, that though I was blind, I now see." They said to him, "What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?" And he answered them, "I have told you already, and you would not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you also want to become his disciples?" And they reviled him, saying, "You are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know that..." Okay, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I want to stop right there. That the way that the blind man just like answered their questions and stuff was so crazy to me right there. Like the way he was like, "Dude, I've already told you what he did, and you didn't listen."
Yeah.
You know, and then before that, they're like, talking about a sinner. He goes, "I don't know whether he's a sinner or not. All I know is I was blind and I can see."
I think that's powerful.
Just stating what he knows. Listen,
Yeah.
this is what he did. I can't speak for all the others, but this is what he did.
I've heard like a testimony like that in other people's lives, and I think it's really powerful. It's like, man, I don't know a whole lot about Jesus, but I went to this church service and he saved me, and that's all I know. And I don't know like a whole bunch about him, but all I know is this, is that I was a terrible person, and now I'm set free from it because of this man. And so I think that's powerful testimony.
Dude, it literally it's so powerful. It can really change your mindset.
For sure, dude.
We were around verse 29,
29, I believe.
yeah.
We know that God has spoken to Moses, but as for this man, we do not know where he comes from. The man answered, "Why, this is an amazing thing. You do not know where he comes from, and yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners, but if anyone is a worshiper of God and does his will, God listens to him. Never since the world began has it been heard that anyone opened the eyes of a man born blind." Verse 33, "If this man were not from God, he could do nothing." And they answered him, "You were born in utter sin, and would you teach us?" And they casted him out. Jesus heard that they had casted him out, and having found him, he said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" And he answered, "And who is he, sir, that I may believe in him?" Verse 37, Jesus said to him, "You have seen him, and it is he who is speaking to you." He said, "Lord, I believe," and worshiped him. Jesus said, "For judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind." Verse 40. Some of the Pharisees near him heard these things and said to him, "Are we also blind?" And Jesus said to them, "If you were blind, you would have no guilt. But now that you say, 'We see,' your guilt remains."
So we see right there, he's talking about, when he's talking about blind and seeing, he's talking about seeing like the knowledge of what the law is. And they're saying, "Are we blind?" He's like, "You can see what you're doing. You know what you're doing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think majority of us all should know what we're doing wrong, because it says that the law was written on our hearts.
Yeah.
We have this moral compass.
It's kind of we talked about Zimbabwe, I believe, on this podcast sometime.
Yeah.
Don't remember what episode, but yeah, that's also kind of a point to be made, is that Zimbabwe had a moral compass, whether he, knew God or not.
He knew. Everybody knows you shouldn't murder. It's like a thing in our minds. Like we know it's wrong.
Yeah, and I've been reading Mere Christianity, and that's kind of like his main point is, we all have this moral compass, no matter what like culture you come from, no matter what time period you come from. Everybody has the same moral compass. Like, how is that like to be so? Like, people of different languages and different tribes and all this, they all like follow the same set of rules that nobody wrote. Sorry, but yeah,
Dude, there's a man named Indy Wilson or Nathan David Wilson. I'm a huge fan. I think I've showed you some of his videos of Tilt-A-Whirl. He's like this. He does these philosophy videos. We watched
Yeah.
him in school. We're watching him in school, and I go, dude, I love this dude. I went and bought the CD and just like binge watched them all.
Yeah, you showed me a couple. They were pretty good.
Dude, they're spot on. They're amazing. And he had one where he was talking about that idea of morality. He was like, yeah, I was talking to this atheist or whatever, you know. And he was like, dude, like about to get in the fight with this dude. And this dude was like, whoa, what are you doing? And he was like, see, you don't really believe in this preying on the weak and you know, the best should just kill the worst, right?
Yeah.
He's like, why? Well, why
It's like
can't
you
I?
truly don't believe in survival of the fittest.
Yeah. He goes, why can't I cut you up and eat you? Why can't I put you in a casserole? Well, all these things. And he's like, see, even atheists, they don't have this God to have a moral compass stick to measure, but they still know deep down there is a moral right and wrong.
Yep, and it's because God writes the law in our hearts.
Yeah.
Because he couldn't write it on tablets because they broke.
Yeah. And we see, if you literally think about it, without God, we have no measuring stick for
Yeah.
right and wrong.
Yeah, no. We're literally just as bad as like chimps.
Exactly. Like, if God wasn't there, dude, any wrong thing you do, it's only right and wrong to people's perspective. And everybody's perspective can be different. It's like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So, anyways.
Yeah. Powerful way to close out John chapter 9
Absolutely.
with this blind man who's now seeing, believing in Jesus. So, and it's another actually place where Jesus claims to be God again. It's like, who's this Son of Man? The one you're talking to is him. And so, yeah, pretty powerful. Well, guys, it's been a great episode, and we'll see you tomorrow for the start of chapter 10.